Today I'm going to talk about knowing the difference between our superego and our higher self. They're quite different, but oftentimes we will be run by our superego when we're wanting to tune in to our higher self. So how can we distinguish between those two voices? First of all, the superego often has a sense of obligation in what it asks of us, while the higher self has more of a sense of connection and life affirmation. So if we're going into a choice or we're feeling something in front of us, if we're doing it out of obligation, or if obligation is the dominant sense, then our superego is running the show. Now, our higher self might have us do the same thing, but it will happen in a completely different way. We'll engage with the other person completely differently. Even doing the same activity, if we're doing it from a place of connection, appreciation, life affirmation. For example, your friend has this great opportunity and wants to go to a meeting for it and asks for you to take care of her children. Your superego often will jump in right away and feel obligated and say yes. But the higher self could tune in, ask more questions, find out more about this opportunity, and then feel her enthusiasm. And out of that, say yes or no. But the place that it's coming from is completely different. Next, the superego is almost always rejecting what is, while the higher self chooses what is. So the superego is always in an attempt to fix, to correct, to be right. The higher self really is not concerned about any of those things. In fact, you can find your higher self when you can't find where is this higher self. You just feel confused. If you pause, and it might take several minutes, maybe half an hour, maybe an hour of journaling. But if you pause and ask yourself, what part of me wants this experience I'm having right now? The higher self has planned out each experience for learning, for trying something out, experimenting. And if you can find the part in you that says, I can find value in this experience. I may not choose to repeat it, but this moment that I'm having it, I can find value in it. Now you're starting to connect closer into the higher self. Because the higher self sees this organic, unfolding flow that is appropriate, is right, even if it's a learning process of learning what not to do. Well, the superego is in rejection of what is. Next, the superego has a fear of consequences and is trying to guarantee safety, while the higher self has a sense of freedom and fulfillment. So the superego really wants to make sure everything's going to be okay. And, I'm going to be able to be right. I'm going to be safe. I'm going to be within the rules. While the higher self has this sense of freedom, has this sense of fulfillment. What right now is going to make my life fuller, richer, more connected, more harmonious, more creative? Sure, I'm going to be thoughtful about how I do it, but I'm going to go for that thing that's really authentic. It may take patience, but there's this sense that this is authentic for me. While the superego is more quick because it's already calculated what's going to be safe. Okay, next. Rules, that's the superego, and flexibility and responsiveness. For example, if you're going to loan somebody money, your superego will have a response right away because your superego has rules about who deserves to get a loan and who doesn't. But the higher self doesn't have so many rules. It's much more flexible and responsive. It might say yes sometimes and no sometimes, and you might not always even be able to say exactly why, but there's a sense of appropriateness, a sense of participation that is called forth sometimes and not other times. Can you feel that difference? Somebody wants money from you and a yes arises. It's a flexibility and responsiveness in this moment. And another time they ask and a no arises. It's more of a inner knowing that aligns with this moment. Okay, then the superego is much more about the past and the future and structure, while the higher self is very much based in the present and knowing. This reiterates what I've just said, that the superego has a lot of thoughts, a lot of history of what happened to you in the past, of what risks are going to happen in the future. The superego has this intensity of evaluation, while the higher self has more an intuitive, sensing, knowing, a peace, an ability to let be what will be, while acting from this connection with this moment. You know, you've I'm sure, talked to a friend who, is in a rush and you ask them a question and they kind of just give you a flippant answer. And then another time you may ask the question and they actually explain where they're at with the issue. And you can feel the difference. You can feel when they're more present, more heart-based, more engaged with you. And you know if you talk about the topic from that place, it's going to go completely differently. That's the higher self rather than the superego. And lastly, step back so you can see more. The superego is usually somewhat disengaged and determined, more fixed, while the higher self is more engaged and more at peace. So that's a good summary overall. You can feel when the situation just seems too intense and you withdraw into some sort of structure or holding a position, and whatever is said after that determination doesn't fully register at the heart level. That's when you're in a superego place. But then there's other times when you more have this sense of well-being, and in that time you can be much more engaged. You're more fearless and you're more at peace, and the situation seems to call forth a response in you rather than you attacking the situation. So I hope you're getting a sense that the superego and the higher self might make the same decisions and might not, but they're coming from a different place, and they'll have you engage in a way that causes the situation to unfold differently. So thank you for considering this way of distinguishing between the superego and the higher self.